Order. The clerk will now proceed to read the orders of the day.
Item 1, the Precious Stones and Precious Metals Prevention of Money Laundering and Terrorism Financing Bill, second reading.
Minister for Law.
Move that the bill be now read a second time. Singapore takes a firm stance against money laundering and terrorism financing, or MLTF. In 1992, we joined the Financial Action Task Force, which is an intergovernmental body that sets international standards and promotes the effective implementation of measures to combat MLTF and the financing of proliferation activities relating to weapons of mass destruction. We have implemented a strong anti-money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism, or AML-CFT, framework, in line with the international standards set up by the task force. This includes the prevention, supervision, enforcement, confiscation of proceeds of crime, and targeted financial sanctions against terrorism and proliferation financing. The financial sector and non-financial sectors, such as casinos and pawnbrokers, are subject to a comprehensive range of AML-CFT measures. The financial sector, in particular, has been subject to robust supervision for many years. MLTF enables criminal activity to go undetected and poses serious national security concerns. It also damages our reputation as a trusted international financial and trading center. A robust AML-CFT framework would therefore benefit Singapore and Singaporeans. In line with the broader AML-CFT framework, we have introduced various measures to mitigate MLTF risks in the precious stones and precious metals dealers, or the PMSD sector. In 2014, the Cash Transaction Reporting Regime under the Corruption, Drug Trafficking and Other Serious Crime, or CDSA, was introduced. This requires PSMD to perform customer due diligence, keep records and file cash transaction reports for cash transactions exceeding Singapore dollars 20,000. In 2015, more comprehensive AML-CFT measures were introduced for pawnbrokers, a subset of the sector. Given the inherent risk in the PSMD sector, however, there's a need to take additional and further steps. This would also bring our regime fully in line with international standards set by the Financial Action Task Force. The bill will strengthen existing measures by establishing a comprehensive supervisory and regulatory regime that is risk-focused and which addresses the specific MLTF risks in the PSMD sector. It will allow us to prevent dealings in precious stones and precious metals from being used to facilitate MLTF by, firstly, regulating persons who carry on a business of regulated dealing or business as an intermediary for regulated dealing. And secondly, providing for additional measures beyond the current cash transaction reporting regime for the PSMD sector. We have developed the bill in consultation with key stakeholders through, firstly, a survey of the industry, secondly, consultations with industry associations such as the Singapore Jewellers Association, the Diamond Exchange of Singapore, as well as the Singapore Bullion Market Association. And finally, through a public consultation held between 13th of September and 12th of October last year, 2018. In response to the feedback received, we have streamlined the requirements in the bill to manage regulatory and compliance costs. We have also benchmarked the requirements against practices in other jurisdictions, such as the UK and also Belgium. Let me just run the key features of the bill through this House. The bill provides, firstly, for the appointment of a registrar to supervise PSMD sector. Secondly, it imposes comprehensive AML and CFT measures on regulated dealers. And thirdly, it provides for investigation and enforcement powers, as well as prescription of penalties for failure to abide by the requirements. The bill provides for the regulation of any person who carries on a business of regulated dealing or a business as an intermediary for regulated dealing. This includes persons involved in a manufacturing, importing, or possessing for sale and selling or offering for sale any precious stone, precious metal, or precious product. These persons are currently subject to the cash transaction reporting regime. The bill will seek to impose additional measures on those classes of dealers. The bill goes further to include A. The sale or redemption of asset-backed tokens, which are instruments backed by precious stones, metals, or products. Such tokens may be used for MLTF as they are good stores of value. And secondly, B. The purchase of precious stones, precious metals, or precious products from a customer for the purpose of resale, as these items may be proceeds from crime or used as means for MLTF. Intermediaries such as auction houses and providers of trading platforms services for PSMD, whether by electronic means or otherwise, are also covered under the regime, as they facilitate transactions between buyers and sellers. Regulating these intermediaries will prevent such transactions from being used for MLTF purposes. Clause 4 of the bill provides for the Minister to appoint a registrar, deputy registrars, and assistant registrars to supervise the PSMD sector. Regulated dealers, unless exempted, must register with the registrar in order to carry out the regulated dealing. Clause 7 of the bill provides that the registrar may refuse to grant or refuse to renew registration under circumstances. For example, if applicants were convicted of offences such as those involving fraud, dishonesty, or money laundering. This will help ensure that individuals who are not fit and proper do not operate as regulated dealers in Singapore. Clause 9 of the bill provides for the registrar to impose conditions of registration on registered dealers. Conditions which may be imposed include the requirement to inform the registrar of changes to registration details to ensure that registered dealers remain fit and proper. The registrar may cancel or suspend the registration of dealers under certain circumstances. For example, if the registered dealer fails to comply with any condition of registration, or if the registered dealer is no longer a fit and proper person. Part 3 of the bill sets out the measures for prevention of money laundering and financing of terrorism, which will apply to all regulated dealers who carry out any part of their business of regulated dealing or business as an intermediary for regulated dealing in Singapore. The requirements are broadly categorized as transaction-based or entity-based. Let me explain that. The transaction-based requirements are largely similar to existing requirements under the cash transaction reporting regime, and these include, under Clause 16, which requires regulated dealers to perform customer due diligence, or CDD. These measures, CDD measures under prescribed circumstances, in addition to the existing requirement to do so for cash transactions above 20,000. Clause 17 requires regulated dealers to submit a copy of the cash transaction report to the registrar, in addition to existing requirements to file a cash transaction report. Clause 18, which requires regulated dealers to keep records of transactions where CDD measures are performed and information obtained through these CDD measures. Clause 31, which requires regulated dealers to submit a copy of the information of suspicious transactions to the registrar, in addition to the existing requirement already under the CDSA to disclose suspicious transactions, and also under the Terrorism Suppression of Financing Act to report terrorism financing information. The bill sets out entity-based requirements, and these are new and provided for under Clause 19, which requires regulated dealers to implement adequate programs and measures to prevent MLTF, such as the introduction of internal policies, procedures, and control. In line with the risk-based approach to prevent MLTF, businesses will only be required to develop procedures to address the risk identified in their risk assessment, in addition to the principal obligations prescribed. Taking in feedback from the public consultation, we have streamlined the principal obligations provided in the bill. We will also provide guidance on the obligations and procedures to address the varying degrees and levels of risk to help regulated dealers mitigate risk of MLTF, whilst at the same time also managing compliance costs. The registrar may give written directions to regulated dealers under certain circumstances, such as to stop a particular employee who has been negligent in performing AML-CFT measures on multiple occasions from conducting any part of the regulated dealer's business. This is necessary to enable the registrar to immediately address any activity which contravenes requirements in the bill or which may pose an MLTF risk. The bill provides the registrar with powers of inspection and monitoring, investigation and seizure of property to deal with possible contraventions of the bill. Upon conviction, non-compliance with the bill may lead to fines not exceeding 100,000, an imprisonment term of up to 3 years, depending on the nature and severity of the particular contravention. This is also in line with penalties introduced in other acts, such as the Pawnbrokers Act, as the culpability of persons who commit MLTF offences would be similar. Clause 38 of the bill provides for the minister to exempt any person or class of persons or any activity from any provision of the bill, subject to conditions or restrictions specified. This allows regulated dealers who are already covered under the AML-CFT regimes to be exempted. For example, it is intended for all MES-regulated financial institutions to be exempted from registration and AML-CFT requirements under the bill, where they are already subject to MES regulations. Classes of financial institutions that conduct regulated dealing, for example banks, insurers, stored value facilities, will continue to be supervised by MES. Finally, the bill provides for a transition period of up to 6 months upon the commencement of the bill to provide sufficient time for regulated dealers to register with the registrar. The registrar will also work with the industry, including conducting outreach to raise AML and CFT awareness, as well as issuing guidance to regulated dealers to ensure that they are well placed to comply with the new requirements proposed in this bill. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, the bill will allow us to establish an AML-CFT regime which will raise our AML and CFT standards in the PSMD sector and strengthen Singapore's AML-CFT framework. This will help us to better manage MLTF risks, combat crime and improve security both domestically and globally. It will also reaffirm our commitment to be a responsible member of the international community, upholding our status as a well-regarded and well-regulated financial center. With that, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move.